Hi, everyone. Good evening and welcome to our December Village Board meeting. If you'd please rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance with us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm going to start at the top of the staff reports this evening with the Altamont Fire Department report. Do you have anything additional, Paul, that you want to share?
No, I think we're pretty much caught up with what I did.
With the report you handed in? Okay, that sounds great. Any questions for Chief? No? Okay, excellent. Police Department, we don't have a representative here this evening, but if you have any questions, just email them over to Chief Johnson. I know he's preparing, and we have extra people that he's gotten on for the Altamont Community Tradition event coming up this weekend, so he has covered those bases. And I think he's home with some sick kids tonight, so that's why he couldn't be here. But he'll, if you have anything, please send it to him. Public Works, I have an update from our Superintendent of Public Works, Jeff Moeller. He didn't have a big report tonight. He said the loose leaf pickup is done, so please put those leaves in bags if you have them still. They are still picking up bundled brush and bags along with Christmas trees. Well, that's not nice, not yet. But anyway, we are getting, they're getting the plows and the salters ready, doing maintenance on mowers and trimmers, and they'll be starting a lead copper service line inventory this month, and we'll be reaching out to residents for inspections. This is something we're required to do. I think it's by 2025 is the last part of it. We have to inventory and look at our lead and copper service lines, and they're all being required by the state to do that. Every municipality is. So we've already started it. Actually, Larry Adams has been working on it for some time, so that will continue, and then they'll reach out to you when they want to talk to you about that in your household. So nothing else on Public Works. And I'll thank them too. They started, I think it was Friday or Saturday, but they decorated, they put greens up around the town, and they have the tree up for the weekend's events. And
Looks nice.
yeah, it does, and everything will be lit up for that. So moving on to the treasurer's report. I have a couple things here. We have actually two resolutions that we have to consider tonight. So the first one is consider approving the amended treasurer's abstracts for payment and transfer of funds from November 1st, 2022. Can I have a motion for that?
So moved.
John, and second
I'll second.
is Tressa. And roll call, please.
Trustee Matulowicz.
In favor.
Trustee Ganance.
In favor.
Trustee Scally.
In favor?
Mayor Denine.
In favor. And then after we've reviewed the vouchers for this month, we have consider approving the treasurer's abstracts for payment and transfer of funds from December 6, 2022. Can I have a motion for that one?
So moved.
Michelle, and second,
I'll second it.
John. And roll call, please.
Trustee Matulowicz.
In favor.
Trustee Ganance.
In favor.
Trustee Scally.
In favor?
Mayor Denine.
In favor. I'm going to move to public comment right now, so if you have a comment you'd like to share with the board, you can come on up to the microphone, just tell us who you are and what you'd like to tell us or share with us. I don't see any movement right now, so okay. I'll take that as a good sign. Things are going well. Anybody here have anything they want to share there, or you want to just, if you come up with something, we could do it at the end too? All right, let's move on to our agenda tonight. The first part is our public hearing on item number 1. Allison, do you want to open the public hearing? We tend to always forget and skip over that part.
So I'll read the notice of public hearing that was published in the paper.
Thank you.
Notice is hereby given that a public hearing will be held before the Village Board for the Village of Altamont at the Village Community Room on the 6th day of December 2022 at 7:00 p.m. regarding the adoption of a local law amending Chapter 150 of the Village Code to incorporate the New York State minimum requirements for enforcement of the New York State Uniform Fire Prevention and Building Code and State Energy Conservation Construction Code of the Village of Altamont, New York. Copies of the proposed local law shall be available at the time of the hearing and shall be available at times prior to and after the hearing at the village clerk's office during normal business hours for the purpose of inspection or procurement by interested persons. Patricia Blackwood, Village Clerk, December 1st, 2022.
Okay, thank you. So the public hearing is open. And before we ask if anybody has comments on that, Allison, is it can I ask you for a brief summary? This kind of is a state requirement. so-
Yes.
Yes.
So the local law is to amend our Chapter 150 of the Village Code to implement some minimum standards that have been adopted by New York State. The minimum standards are for the administration of the New York State Uniform Building, Fire, and Energy Conservation Code. The local law takes what we already have in place in Chapter 150 of the Village Code, but amends and supplements it to add some new minimum requirements that the state has required. So some specific examples are, there are some more detailed application requirements for building permits that residents will have to comply with when submitting that application to the building department. There's also some additional areas where construction inspections will be required. And additional categories of uses where an operating permit will be required from the village's building department. There is an exception built into that where if the classification or the activity described is already covered by a certificate of occupancy that has been issued by the building department, that would cover, in certain circumstances, the requirement to obtain a separate operating permit. There's also a new section added into Chapter 150 requiring condition assessments for parking garages. I don't think we have any of those currently in the village, but it is now a new minimum requirement under the state code, where if a municipality has one of these parking garages, it puts the obligation on the property owner to provide condition assessments to the local building inspector for periodic review. So we are incorporating that into our local law because it's a state requirement, and if there are any parking garages in the future proposed or constructed in the village of Altamont, they'll be required to comply with these provisions. So that's pretty
Yeah,
much
and
it.
I know you had discussions with our code enforcement officer about this as well, so he's aware of these new codes that have come up, and we'll have to incorporate them like you just discussed, so going forward. So I don't know if anyone has questions that can be answered? A little dry stuff, right? So if nobody, I was gonna say, Dean, this is right up your alley. Anyway, so I don't see any movement on that. Does anybody here have questions for Allison?
No,
All right, so I need a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
John, and
I'll
second.
second.
Michelle is second, and roll call, please.
Trustee Mitchellwitz?
In favor.
Trustee Ganance?
In favor.
Trustee Scally?
In favor?
Mayor Denine.
In favor. So I'll move on to item number 2, which is consider approving the local law number 2 of 2022 to adopt these New York State minimum requirements for enforcement of the New York State Uniform Fire Prevention and Building Code and the State Energy Conservation Construction Code. Could I have a motion for that?
So moved.
Tressa, and second.
I'll second it.
John, and roll call, please.
Trustee Mitchellwitz?
In favor.
Trustee Ganance?
In favor.
Trustee Scally?
In favor?
Mayor Denine.
In favor. Moving on to item 3, we are considering bid submitted by Callahan Industries Incorporated in the amount of $66,495 for installation of approximately 761 linear feet of concrete sidewalk and related work along Fairview Avenue, per recommendation of Barton and LaJudas Engineers. Callahan Industries was the low bidder out of a total of 6 bids. So just for a little background on this, we have received a $125,000 grant for sidewalks on both Lark and Fairview. We did the Lark sidewalks in-house, which saved some money as well, which was great, which allowed us to also bring somebody in and do the bidding out for this one. It worked out well that way. So this is out of that money. There's no village budget impact because this is the money that's coming to us. So,
great.
okay. Can I have a motion for that one?
So moved.
Michelle? And second?
I'll second.
Oh, no.
Ooh,
Tressa.
Tressa?
I think
It was
she
a-
beat
It was
me.
a tie, but we'll go with Tressa. And roll call, please.
Trustee Mitchellwitz?
In favor.
Trustee Ganance?
In favor.
Trustee Scally?
In favor?
Mayor Denine.
In favor. Item number 4 is consider approval of the 2023 officers elected into office by the membership of the Altamont Fire Department on Monday, November 7th, 2022. Paul Miller, Chief, and Thomas Tubbs, Assistant Chief. Could I have a motion?
So moved.
And John is first and second.
I'll second.
Tressa. And roll call, please.
Trustee Mitchellwitz?
In favor.
Trustee Ganance?
In favor.
Trustee Scally?
In favor?
Mayor Denine.
In favor. Moving on to item 5, Consider approving renewal of the enhanced plan with New York State Volunteer Firefighter Cancer Benefit Program for Altamont Fire Department, department's eligible volunteer firefighter members. This is something we've been doing for several years now, so I think you're probably all familiar with it. Okay, can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Was that you, Michelle? Michelle?
me.
And second was?
I'll second
Go for it, John. John. Okay, and roll call, please, Michelle and John.
Trustee Mitchell,
In favor.
trustee Ganance,
In favor.
trustee Scally,
In favor?
Mayor Denine.
In favor. Item 6 is consider request of Altamont Fire Department to participate in the following event: the 3rd Annual Peter Becker Christmas Parade in Bern on December 11th at 3 p.m. per request of Paul Miller, Chief. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Tressa, and second?
I'll second.
Michelle? And roll call, please.
Trustee Mitchellwitz,
In favor.
trustee Ganance,
In favor.
trustee Scally,
In favor?
Mayor Denine.
In favor. Moving to item 7, consider request of SMS, Rail Lines of New York to hold a Santa Train event on Saturday, December 10th at 6:30. I think we're aware that this was something that only came in, I think, Thursday. It's something that this is kind of tricky because this was an event that was literally just came about. I had received a message saying we're going ahead with an event on December 10th. And I wrote an email back and said, well, wait a minute now, we have, some standards of meeting for any event, whether it's a 5K race. Anybody who's come to these meetings, we approve things by board vote generally. I'll use Winterfest for example. They came to us months ago with the plan. The acting president always runs details by. In the past, 2 of our board members had been involved and still are, I think, with the activity. So it's an ACT-sponsored event that the village is very involved in. It's kind of I'd say a co-event sometimes because we had different aspects of it that we not helped with facilitate, but we were part of. And that happened, and for years, this train event was part of that event. This year, there was not an understanding because the event had changed, and that happens, the events change, so they couldn't work out the times, and so the Santa Train part wasn't part of the Winterfest this year, what used to be Victorian Holidays. I know back in October, they approached me, a representative approached me, a resident who said, don't you want to see a Santa Train? I'm like, I love the Santa Train.
Yeah.
I think it was a great event. Dean worked, I know Dean and my mom, and, worked very much with SM. I don't know if it was SMS at the time, but it was, okay. And worked very hard on bringing that to Altamont, and I think we all loved the train. It's not about the train. It's about that we have some procedures and process for approving anything, because we have to think about the safety, how it's going to happen, how it's organized, and things like that. So this is a little troubling because of that. It's not about what it is. It's about, can it go forward the way we're being asked to push something forward? We don't have details. We just got a letter, I think it was Thursday. It might have been Wednesday. I have to look at it, but Wednesday or Thursday? Wednesday, okay. Saying we're going to have this event on the property of Altamont Corners. That's where people will gather, and that's a parking lot, so I'm not sure. Personally, I'm worried about the safety aspect. Talked with Jason Johnson, Chief Johnson. We don't have more than our normal coverage for Saturday night, which is 1 officer. He cannot provide that because we've already provided the extra help for the planned event for Sunday, the one that we've talked about for quite some time. So I don't know how you feel about it. I just wanted to put it out there. It's a tricky thing. I did call Allison about it as well because I worry about what we're liable for by approving something. Yet I don't want to be, the Grinch here, but I'm just, this thought has to go into this going forward. So you guys can tell me what your thoughts are.
Well, they said that they're going to have their own personnel with traffic.
But how many? Like,
Oh, I
if
don't
you could
know.
say,
Yeah, they didn't say how
We've
many.
got 2 of our personnel coming, and
Yeah.
there's 120 kids and 2
Yeah.
people.
My concern is this event hasn't happened in 4 years.
I think since COVID,
2019, right?
since
Right.
COVID, yeah.
I've noticed that anything that happens post-COVID, that things are happening again, they
Yeah.
tend to be pretty
Bigger.
big events.
Yeah.
Everybody's excited to get back out.
Sure, yeah.
So
Try to get cooped
there is
up.
definitely some concern about
Yeah.
traffic and pedestrian safety.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a pretty big event. I don't see any detail in this, I guess, application letter that says how they plan to address any of these things.
And to be straightforward with people that are here and then people at home who might see this afterwards, we've never needed, our code states for the gathering events, public events, there are things that have to be done. It has to be a
Yes.
letter submitted, talking about the event, et cetera. This will force us now looking at this. We need more specific language because this can't happen again. And there, you know, I looked at other villages. We should probably revisit this in the code. Tressa was talking about that. You know,
Yeah.
this is a code thing we might want to look at for the future because apparently now we need it. We need to, you know, have an actual application, not just a letter. I think it says like a letter is written to the mayor and trustees. It
But
does,
I
you do need
believe-
to have these details. And going, you know, past, we make races.
Yeah.
Submit, they had a race recently and they used part of the state road, but we didn't release approving it until after the state signed off on it. So there are things we look for, you know, just to
Yes.
make sure that they're aware, the state's aware that this is going on. We've done that for races even coming out of Bozenkill, but I'm just saying, but, you know, there are certain things we do require, even though it's not a checkoff list. We've never had a checkoff list, but we've always asked for these things. And they, generally, any applicant comes forward and talks with our chief of police to see, you know, what can be done, and then arrangements are made. That's why it's done ahead of time. There's a reason it's done ahead of time.
I
So-
agree. I think the event is fantastic. It's,
Yeah.
the kids love it. I like it. I
Yeah.
think it's great. I wish this had been planned better and
Yeah.
done the right way, because I'm not comfortable approving this as is.
Allison, do you want to weigh in at all? I mean, I know, like, I've spoken with you on the side because I had concerns, that's all. But I didn't know if this is a liability issue. I don't know. I mean, I know there's liability, I think we've said with anything in the world, but,
Yeah.
but,
You know, just to, you know, clarify, you know, my understanding, you know, this is an event that's not taking place on village property, but the concern is that if we're issuing a permit, you know, for what could be considered a mass gathering event, do we have a responsibility to ensure that, you know, this event meets certain standards that we have typically applied when processing these requests for a permit? And, you know, my recommendation to the board would be, you know, you have a past practice where you've required that certain plans and procedures be in place. You know, it's my understanding for events of this size and for this event in past years, you know, it has been held and organized on dates where, you know, we could ensure that there was public safety, you know, personnel who would be available to provide assistance at the event. To the extent that, you know, this application hasn't provided the same level of information, you know, has not made the same preparations as far as, you know, either, you know, paying for, you know, the presence of emergency service responders, you know, similar to what other event organizers have done, or at least making sure that it's scheduled on a date when those can be provided by the village. You know, without those pieces in place, and those have provided a basis for you to issue permits on similar events or even this same event in past years, it sounds as though the village would have a basis not to approve the permit this year. And if it has any kinds of concerns about, you know, the provisions that are being put in place to ensure that there's sufficient parking, or that the event participants are organized in an area where they will be, you know, safely, you know, segregated from parking, or, you know, moving vehicles, it's an event for children, you know, it certainly would appear that you have a basis in, to not approve the permit this year.
So I have a question too. This letter is from SMS Rail, who is not affiliated with Jeff Thomas in any way, saying that Jeff is giving permission to use his land. Shouldn't we have something from Jeff saying that?
Absolutely, it's private property.
Right. And this is not signed by Jeff.
No.
Do we have anything in writing about the planned or expected number of participants for the event?
we don't know. I mean, the history is it was a well-attended event, but it was also connected to a festival that was a very well-attended event, so I'm not sure if you could actually guess. I wouldn't want to take a guess. I just can't. I could be very wrong either way.
I do just want to note, and it's something we probably should have discussed in the local law that we're adopting tonight, which incorporates some of the new minimum standards under the New York State Uniform Code. There is a requirement for an operating permit for outdoor events where planned attendance exceeds 1,000 people. And I don't know if we're talking about that kind of
No,
number.
we're not talking about that, no. But it's good to know that's there too, just for the future.
It's wrong.
Anybody else have any more comments on it?
Yeah, because all they said is just they're gonna supply cones, caution tape. I mean, a lot of these details, if we had a permit with checklist of everything needs to be done, well, you need to have this many people, you need to have, this far in advance to say that our police department's gonna be present to accommodate any safety needs.
Right.
And it's not really descriptive.
Yeah, I know in speaking with them on the phone, they said they didn't need, the word was they didn't need us because they could have plenty of people, but I don't know what plenty is, because, I don't know what
Yeah.
that means. Dean, you have some background, do you want to share something? Sure, because I know you have experience with this.
Most of you know me, but Dean Whalen, I'm part of ACT. Yeah, we were not able to coordinate with our
Right.
staffing and all that, plus still some concern with COVID to be able to do the typical event that afternoon, that late afternoon. This shocked us a little bit too. The reason I came up though is I think I wanted to recommend or suggest that the precedent has already been set with some of the other permitting you've done with some of your events related to the state road.
Yeah.
Okay, we don't control the state road directly, but we have required information because we know there's been events like the races and ACT events
Sure.
that are on that road, even the car parade.
Yeah,
The reason I mention that is I think it's very naive on the part of the proposers to assume that there's not going to be an issue with people, kids or parents or whatever, coming down at least that short portion of road from the parking lot at the corners across the tracks. And I can speak from experience that, I think it was even last year, we actually were able to do the event.
oh, did you? Oh, I didn't realize that.
For the first time in 2-3 years.
Okay.
And that crossing is dangerous, even with the police on staff.
Yeah.
Mostly the drivers, as you probably all know because you've been there, most of the drivers just want to go through.
Yes.
And they're really good about it, but they want to go through. So I just kind of want to make that clarification to the board as well.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Dean. That helps.
But also, you don't want to set a precedent where ACT has jumped through all the hoops and done everything required and provided us with information
Well,
that we
yeah.
aren't getting here.
Well, and I think Allison said that earlier too, it's not just Altamont Community Nutrition, it's the race sponsors.
It's
We've-
everybody, yeah.
We've had the Albany race folks contact us, first thing they do is write me and they write the police chief when we go through it. So Allison, I guess we could, let's just take a vote, let's do this. Let me just look at this for a second, how this is considered, because Patty, I don't know what makes it easier for me to, I could just read it as is and vote on it that way. That'll work, right? Okay. All right, so look at 7, I did read it, but I'll say, consider request of SMS Rail Lines of New York to hold Santa train event on Saturday, December 10th at 6:30 PM. Is there a motion to consider this? And I'm not hearing a motion. So, okay, so that is denied at this point in time. And I think what we can do is, Allison, perhaps we can have a conversation with the zoning officer afterwards, just as far as informing, what goes forward, I can't control, but at least we can have so he understands what's going on, and we'll talk, I'll touch base with the police chief and things like that, just so everyone's aware what's going on. Okay.
I feel more comfortable if the police department was there to.
Yeah, and unfortunately,
honest with
I think we have, a person on per shift, a holiday.
And you can't
Filling
be-
shifts at the holidays is tough, and we've already filled a couple extra people for Sunday. So that, that's hard.
I live on Prospect and
Yeah.
the traffic is
Yeah, it's that busy
tough
time of year,
there.
people
And
are,
especially if you're gathering a few hundred people
Sure.
near the railroad tracks. I mean, people want to come, like as Dean noted,
Yeah.
over the rail tracks to get there to get up on the hill or make a left on 156. And making left or right even from where Prospect
Yeah.
is difficult, so
Well, this
let alone.
event was shared all over Facebook, and people from Gilman Center, Byrne, Knox have expressed interest in coming down. They need parking.
can I throw something out there just as a comment? It's nothing, we're not voting on anything. Would you all be comfortable if when we're talking with the sponsors or the hosts, if we said, we could maybe talk to the police chief, what about Sunday night at the same time when we already have the double shifts on, coming back at that time? The one event is done around 3:30, only if he could man it, there's middle hours. I don't know. I'm not speaking for Chief Johnson, but it would be,
If there's an alternative to hold this
if there's a way to do
safely,
it
then
safely.
yes, I'm all for that.
That's what I'm wondering.
Yes.
Because I just figure Sunday, restaurants are closed, the parking is open. We already have
More staff
extra
with
staff
safety.
on, we're having extra staff on.
That doesn't-
Question?
I keep thinking of the little ones. They're seeing Santa in the daytime, they're sitting on a glass on the gazebo, talking to him, and then he's coming into the village at night. That to me is confusing.
It could be, but I'm thinking the Santa confusion, I believe in Santa, and he's got lots of magic, and he might be leaving by train that night. After seeing all the little boys and girls during the day, he may want
He
to.
needed a nap, and then
he-
he's gonna
he-
leave on the train.
He's gonna officially, he came in
Got
to
this.
pet parade it, and, that's, I'm just saying, I would, actually, I think that wouldn't be as long as you don't mind me saying, you could consider this. This might be
Well,
something.
no, if there's a way to do it,
After
of
talking,
course.
I could have them talk
Yeah.
to Jason Johnson.
I'd love to see this happen
Okay,
and be
so-
comfortable with it.
I agree with
think
that.
it'd be great.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Patty.
Do you want to vote on that then for Sunday, just in case?
Yeah, we probably would have to if that's.
What do you, Allison, that would be
Can we
appropriate,
do
right? Yeah, to,
You can do that as long as, the applicant is prepared to put all the other, what he's represented, he's willing and able to do on Saturday night, you would be requiring that same
Stuff on Sunday night.
on Sunday, but
Sunday.
also you already have available, my understanding is,
I think, contingent
Yeah.
upon officer availability, because I'm thinking they're working a middle shift, maybe it could happen.
Okay.
It would have to be contingent upon us checking. So the motion would be to allow an SMS Santa event with the same parameters for Sunday evening, contingent on the contingent on the fact that we have officers available for, to work the event. I guess that works. Sorry. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right, so could I have a motion for that?
But we would have to have their volunteers as well, right?
I said with the same,
The same
The same
parameters,
parameters.
the
With
same
our police
parameters that have
department
been
available.
submitted for Saturday night. So the resolution is consider using the same parameters that they've set forth, the brief outline for Saturday night, their personnel, along with their caution tape, their signs, et cetera. For Sunday evening, contingent upon the availability of Altamont police officers, which we would have to check that first before going forward.
I'm having a hard time, though, from a legal standpoint, approving SMS to hold an event on somebody else's property that hasn't signed or is
True.
not represented here.
Good point.
They're
Okay,
just
so you know
saying
what?
that this guy
And
is
then
said
also
that they use
contingent
their
upon that too.
property.
How about,
Like, I'm gonna have a
You know
party
what?
at Carrie's
Let's-
house.
I'm not gonna make a motion because it's not official. Let's stick with 7 as is. And we'll go from there. How about
Okay.
that? Okay? Okay.
Wait a minute.
So
So
I didn't make a, so the motion is,
there's no motion?
there's no motion.
Okay.
I'm erasing it.
Okay.
Santa magic.
Okay.
Okay, item 8 is consider approval of board minutes for November 1st, 2022.
So moved.
Michelle is first, and second is,
Second it.
John is second, and roll call, please.
Trustee Matulowicz?
In favor.
Trustee Ganance?
In favor.
Trustee Scally?
In favor?
Mayor Denine?
In favor. Before item 9, does anyone have anything else? Okay, so consider motion to adjourn. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Tressa, second.
I'll second it.
John, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Well, happy holidays, everybody. Have a great
Merry Christmas.
Christmas, Hanukkah, New
Hanukkah,
Year's.
everything.
We'll see you back in January. Turn this off.
I'm gonna turn this off.